Good afternoon. My name is Aisha Haynes, and I'm the Assistant Director at the Center for Teaching Excellence. Welcome to the webinar How I Taught a Large Synchronous Course Using Blackboard Collaborate, led by Dr. Avi Gua, an Associate Professor in the Marketing Department in the Darla Moore School of Business.
So listen, welcome. Um, I appreciate, the opportunity to speak to each and every one of you. I want to talk about the first half, at least about what worked for me. It's not clear it works for everybody, but at least it's an opportunity to share ideas so that, it at least gets some conversation flowing about what could or could not work. So again, welcome all. So broadly, I'm going to talk about sort of three chunks in this presentation. Uh, who are we, which is kind of a function of who we are and some questions that came up. Then I want to discuss my experiences and try and respond to some questions along the way. And then I'm going to keep some time at the back end to respond to any questions you have. And it's a discussion, like I may have some ideas, you may have some ideas, and we'll take it from there. So that's the plan, right, moving forward. When I last checked, and clearly this has changed a bit, this is what I saw, right? That there's a mix of people from across the university, some folks from outside the campuses, outside Columbia. May have changed a bit, but that's the group that I saw. And obviously, I see some new names. Welcome all. Um, I also asked, if possible, folks to send me some questions beforehand. Here are the four I got. And these four I will address along the way. And at the end, I'm happy to take other questions, right? So that's where I'm going with this. So I teach Marketing 351 in the business school. It's a class on consumer behavior. It's a non-quantitative class. In this slide, I'm going to discuss constraints and goals, right? The constraints with the class are as follows. This is a large class. So we are talking 350 plus people. So I'm aware there may be a slight discord between what I consider a large class and what others may consider a large class. To me, a large class is something that's, over 250. And I use 250 simply because the software I use is Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. And once you go over 250, a lot of functionalities are disabled, right? So that's what I'm defining. So that's the context where I'm coming from. The other thing to consider is TA support. I mean, we all have different expectations of TA support. I have what I call 0.5 FTE, 0.5 of a person. She's very good, don't get me wrong, but that's the support I have, right? She's supposed to give me 5-10 hours a week. We hope for the best. Those are constraints. The next is, what are my goals with this class? And this is important because you may have different goals than I, and therefore you'll do things differently. I have 3 goals. I want to be a warm person. And I'll talk about this slightly later on. I think people go in one of 2 directions. I think people either try to be competent or warm. And you pick. I'm not saying a warm person is not competent and vice versa. I'm just saying it's an issue of emphasis. I lean into warmth more than competence. We'll talk a bit more about that. The second is the class I teach. At least one thing the head of department has said is, please try and recruit people for the marketing major. So again, this fits with the warmth, right? I'm not trying to say I'm the most nerdy, smartest dude in town. I'm just saying I give good contact and I'm a fun guy and maybe you want to consider marketing as a major. It's at the back of my head. It therefore impacts my teaching. The third one is I'm in the business school. And one of the things we do is connect heavily with practice, right? So the guy coming into my class really doesn't want to do a master's in marketing or a PhD or anything like that. Like you may argue somebody coming to psychology, if they're really good, they may want to go on and do a MA, move forward. That's not what the really good guys want to do. They want to go out, get a job. So it's up to me to connect my class to practice. And that leads to some changes. That may not apply to you, but that's something to consider in the way I've structured my class. So I'm going to talk about these points a bit and then move to some other issues. So the first thing I want to address is a question somebody asked. How do you manage breakout rooms? Here's the short answer. I don't. I can't do it in Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. Once you cross 250 people, there are no breakout rooms. So that is out, right? And look, this class currently it's about 350. It could go up to 450. I mean, it's a nightmare dealing with so many breakout rooms. So short answers, I don't do it. That's the one question I'm unable to answer in this session, right? So let's talk a bit about warmth and competence. And I want to give a shout out to someone, I think James, who sent me a YouTube video on this. So you see here the definitions of warmth and competence. And you know, people have differing opinions. But the point is, it's kind of hard to be both. You want to be a bit of both, and then you lean into one. And people have different views as to which is better. So Machiavelli said it's much better to be feared, much better to be like competent than warm. The clip James sent me, I think it's from the Bronx Tale. You know, same thing. I think that's what Charles Palminteri said. I have a slightly different view. I have a view that one, people already consider me as competent. Like my audience is undergraduate students. As far as they're concerned, they are looking at a guy who's, I don't know, I'm old, I'm like 50 something. So they look at a guy who's worked a long time, who's got a PhD. And so as far as they are concerned, they're saying this guy probably knows stuff. So what they're really concerned is he a nice guy? Like, can I relate to him? Does he care about me? So that's one reason to go down the warmth route. The second one is probably the last comment here. That, you know, there is work that says warmth contributes much more to evaluations of others about us, and it's the first thing people judge. And here's why. It's kind of hard to judge competence. I meet you first time. I don't know if you're good, bad. Maybe I've seen your degrees, but I can't make out if you're warm. Like, I don't need a, you know, if you're a history teacher, I don't know too much about history. Maybe you're good, maybe you're bad. I have no idea. But I've always, for my entire life, I've been judging people if they're nice from the time I was a child. I meet you, I'll make a decision in 5 minutes that, look, this is a warm, nice person, or this is a cold, you know, someone else. Hence, I'm leading with warmth. That impacts some of the decisions I've taken. You may choose to go a different way, but that's just some context into some of the things I do in my class. Okay. Let's talk a bit about Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. Now, I'm aware some of you may use Zoom, so this may not be that relevant. But let's talk about Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. It's very difficult to see students. I mean, there's 350 people. I have no idea if they are there. I mean, for all I know, they could have just turned that thing on and disappeared, right? So I have absolutely no idea, right? Are they there? Their cameras are off. That's a problem. Here's the thing. It's my problem and I have to deal with it. So you'll see that in the decisions I make. A limited functionality, no breakout rooms, nothing fancy. I can't even see everybody's name on the side, right? That's a real problem. Again, 350 people, most will not participate. Like they really won't. What are you going to do? 350 people, I can't call on them. And if I call on them, I have to unmute each one individually. That's a nightmare. That's a constraint. But here's the issue. It's my constraint and I have to deal with it, right? Chat is the primary mode of communication. So I see a chat question. Does the poll feature work with 350? So Jennifer, I'm going to respond to that question slightly later in this. Short answer, I don't use the poll feature. I use something called iClicker, and that works equally well, right? I've actually never used the poll feature just because I'm used to using iClicker and it offers me some other functionalities, right? And lastly, I have the view that technology is going to be a problem. Like I walk into class and I tell them on the first day, there's whatever, 350, 400 of you. We're using technologies like iClicker, Blackboard. Look, there is going to be problems. I mean, someday something's going to go off. Either your internet's going to go off, my internet's going to go off. There's going to be some issue. And when it is, just smile and we'll get over it. Those are constraints. It's on me to deal with it. And I think if you approach it from that perspective, I think if something goes wrong, they're very forgiving. But I say that upfront, day one of class. We are using technology. Who knows? Like I expect to have, 80-90% sort of operational ability. But there will be classes where things break down and we'll figure it out, right? I think if you approach it that way, it's easier to deal with it because this will happen. Something will happen. My internet will go off, the internet will go off, who knows, right? And so those are some constraints I have. I take the view that these are my problems and it's up to me to deal with it. Like complaining won't help. And I figure I just got to set expectations accordingly. I think if you go down that route, class becomes easier. The next are goals, right? So I have 3 goals. I want to be a warm person. I want to sell the marketing major. And I want to connect to practice. Let's talk about the warmth part first. So again, how do you communicate warmth? So just think of some student in my class, never seen me. He's, who knows, for all I know, he's sitting at home somewhere. Probably, I know, in his kitchen, he's got some laptop open. He's trying to figure things out. And how do I communicate warmth? That's a real issue. So let's talk a bit about that. I open with a slide like this, right? I'm just trying to say I'm a human being. So there's a photo of me, White House with my folks, photo of me as a Boy Scout. All of them know what Boy Scouts are. Photo of me in school. Okay, so in a lot of schools, uniforms are not there. Where we went, uniforms were compulsory. Photo of me with my PhD colleagues, and photo of me on holiday. I just try to get them thinking, look, I'm just a regular guy, right? I'm not that different from you. I'm not weird. These are my photos, and let's take it from there. That actually buys me something. People every now and then will send some comments, they'll do something, it gets a conversation. Here's my introductory slide on day one. Again, you can make out I'm trying to say I'm a guy, I have my own quirks, and let's see what happens. So firstly, everyone wants to know what to call you. I tell them what to call me. I found over time that works best. They all called me Dr. G. Then I tell them, look, I don't understand football or anything. I do understand basketball because that's what I used to watch in college. And so I tell them, you'll see me and I'll get excited about NBA and NCAA. And again, it kind of humanizes you and it gives them a basis that very often you'll get some text or something from one of these guys on basketball. They know how to connect with you. Then I put up some, LeBron, Kawhi, just humanizing. March Madness, I put up March Madness because it's going to happen this semester. And then whatever I watch, right? Again, I think if you just say you're a human being, it gets you a long way. I think often folks feel you shouldn't share. I know in my case, it's always worked for me. You may have a different sort of view. And I don't think it diminishes authority or anything if you do this. It just humanizes you. There'll be some comments at the start of the class. So I always show up early to class. And they'll make some comment, do you know Duke got beat by UNC? I mean, I'm going to hear this a lot on Tuesday. So everybody hates Duke, and I came from Duke. I promise you I'm going to get like 20 messages saying, UNC came to your university and beat you. And they get really happy doing that. And that's fine. I have no problem with that, right? Then connecting with practice. So this is a TV show. It's a kind of businessy TV show. So, they deal with business. These are real deals that happen on this. These are all successful business people. And I tend to open most of my class sessions with some episode from Shark Tank. They like it. Like this is real stuff. Like if I say I'm going to teach you X in class, like say, I don't know, let's take a simple example, break even. Most boring topic in the history of the earth. My apologies to all those from the Moore School who are there who teach break even. Highly boring. But if I show them a Shark Tank episode and I say, look, that guy just calculated break even in his head and used it on the show, then they say, oh my God, the stuff we are learning is actually being used in real life by someone. And that gets them all excited. This meets two purposes. I'm trying to sell the marketing major and I'm trying to connect to practice. So a show like this helps me a lot. Now, look, I'd love to take credit for this, but truth is there's some guy in George Mason who went through all the shows and updates it every now and then. And that tells you which show episodes to pull to whatever class I'm doing. You don't need to show the full show, just show 2 minutes. But it gets them all excited. This is real stuff. People are using what you're doing. Like, this is not some class that I cannot take into my internship. Again, those are my goals. That's what I'm doing there. Would this work for everyone? I'm not sure. But I think contingent on your goals, anything you can do to push them there, I think is helpful, right? They're used to hearing your lectures. If they get some external validation, I think they get excited. And so that's kind of where I'm going with this, right? And so this has really helped me. Like, ever since I've introduced this, I think my ratings seriously jumped up by like 0.5. Okay. So that's enough about my goals and my constraints. And again, if there are any questions, post them in the chat. I will address it. There's one pending question on the poll, which I haven't come to yet, which I will come to in a couple of slides. The next, I want to distinguish between these two factors called hygiene factors and satisfiers. I'll try and explain this. Hygiene factors. These are things that they expect you to be able to do. If you do it well, nobody cares. If you do it badly, they complain like mad. That's why it's called a hygiene factor. It doesn't lead to satisfaction, but it definitely leads to dissatisfaction. Satisfiers. Satisfiers are things that they're not sure if you'll do. If you do it, it leads to intense satisfaction. So again, that's the way to think about these two groups. So there's hygiene factors and there's 4: technology, syllabus, fidelity, and fair exam. I'll talk about each of these. And again, there are 4 satisfiers. And the reason I've broken them out is, everybody has to meet hygiene factors. Like, whichever class you're in, the hygiene factors have to happen. Whether you'll do satisfiers, who knows? Depending on your goals, what you want to be, etc. But if you don't meet the hygiene factors, they will scream, right? Let's talk about hygiene factors for a minute. So let's look at the first one, technology. There is no excuse for not knowing the technology. Like, it's painful, but sadly you have to learn it. So, this thing hit me, I think, March of last year, I think. And in March of last year, everything went topsy-turvy, COVID happened, and we had to go online. First decision was, do I go Zoom or Blackboard Collaborate? I chose Blackboard Collaborate. Why? The selfish reason is frankly 2. One is I knew Aisha, and she told me, look, I can teach you Blackboard Collaborate. Well, really well. Zoom, maybe. That's one. Second is, we had a guy in the business school, and the business school guys will attest to this. He said the same thing. He said, look, I'm going to give you a bunch of tips on Blackboard Collaborate. Zoom, good luck. I mean, I was there trying to learn a new technology. I was very clear. I'm going to learn Blackboard Collaborate. I mean, there are people who will help me. Zoom, who knows? The second is syllabus. In the business school, at least, a syllabus is viewed as a contract. And so if you follow the syllabus, the administration will defend you with their life. The only place they get highly nervous is if suddenly in the middle of the semester you break your syllabus and say, I'm doing X. So again, I think it's imperative that your syllabus is written well to fit with your class. So I've run it past Aisha when I started. And look, there was a learning curve. Don't get me wrong. There are things I did that I wish I had not done. But over time, I think the syllabus is largely there. They know what to expect, and they know I'll follow it. If you follow the syllabus, it's there. Now, look, don't get me wrong. Half of them don't read it, right? So now, whose problem is it if they don't read it? My view is it's my problem. There's no point blaming them. You didn't read it. So I actually do a syllabus quiz at the start of the class. It's 4 points. It's 4 points. You're actually going to get real points if you do it. It's 4 points. You confirm you read the syllabus. Here are the 10 things that give the most problems. And you've just confirmed you do it. So I'm sorry. So again, I think the syllabus is important, but you can't just stop there. Please do not assume they're going to read it. I promise you they will not. So is it their problem or your problem? And I put it to you, it's your problem. My view with my class is everything is my problem. It's up to me to anticipate and manage. I may not succeed, but if you go in with that, your life becomes infinitely easier trying to manage the class. The third is fidelity to content. What does this mean? It means if I say I'm going to teach X, I do teach X, right? Sometimes people get sidetracked, and at least in my experience, the student gets very confused. He said, "You're supposed to teach me X today. You have decided to teach Y. I'm very confused. Is it on?" And I think most of them look at content. Is it going to come on the exam? Is it going to help me? So those are my criteria for putting content on the syllabus. And if I say I'm going to do X, I do it, right? And if something happens, like I got COVID last semester, and so I apologized to the class. I said, "Look, guys, I have COVID. I can't teach for another week. I'm really sorry. So you're going to get some asynchronous lectures, although it's a synchronous class. It's going to be for 1 week, and next week I'll be back." And I was back next week, and they were fine with that, right? But that's what I mean by fidelity to content. And then fair exam. Like I just tell them, here are some examples of questions that could come on the exam, and it should reflect what's coming on the exam. There are ways to still get your variance if you do that, like you can put time pressure. But as long as they're told about it before, they know what's coming. So again, hygiene factors are things that if I don't do it, they will scream. If I do it, I'm not saying they'll be happy, but at least they won't scream. So I think those are things that you should make your own list of hygiene factors and be clear you have to do it. If you don't do it, they'll scream. But just because you do it doesn't mean they're happy, right? The more exciting action is on the right side of this slide, satisfies. Now, this is individual to you, depending on what you want to put into it. But this is what really gets them excited. So I'm going to walk through some of these. And some of this, I hope, will sort of strike a chord with you. Okay. So now the first thing is, and I want to address this point. There's a question, how do you manage the chat room while trying to lecture? That's actually a good question. So I'm going to do a sidebar before coming to satisfiers and deal with it. It's hard. I mean, the way I've got, if you look at, so you're not here with me right now, but if you were in my house over my shoulder, what you would see is because I've put PowerPoint full screen, I can't see any of the chat questions, and I can't see whether you've raised your hand. So if I do this, it's a nightmare. You'll have a chat question, I won't see it, and it's a nightmare. So you do various things to manage it. I mean, I have a second laptop going. Is it perfect? No. But I'm logged in there as a guest, and I literally lurk there. So that's why there are two of me. If you look at the participant list, you'll see two of me. The second guy is like a fake thing, but that person is just there so that I can see the comments on the side, right? So for example, the last comment is about polling, and I've still got to address that. But now I know there was a question because it's there on the second laptop, right? So that I think is a very good way to manage it, right? Now you will say, I don't have a second laptop, that stuff. But one of the things we've implemented is everybody should have a second laptop, and that really helps. The second thing that's helped, and so somebody said multiple monitors works really well. Maybe I haven't tried that. It could well be that's a good solution. So again, guys, if you want to try the multiple laptops, reach out to Chris. I'm sure he'll sort of walk you through it. But you need some mechanism, right, to look at your screen and the chats. The next thing is I have a TA. Now look, one of my colleagues is here. We share the same TA. I have nothing but good things to say about my TA. I mean, she took my class, I think, in summer. So she knows the content. She's comfortable with online technology. So Jennifer said she also has some kind of student who co-moderates. So again, clearly other folks are doing the same thing. They use different names for the person there. But I think it's a really good mechanism. And look, I mean, she will do things beyond just telling me that there's a chat question. If I get booted out, it's happened once this year where my internet failed or something. She will post a note saying, look, guys, I tested him. He's got booted out. So he'll come back, just sit tight. And it's It's fine. I mean, she'll manage that for the 10 minutes I'm out. Or if there's a chat question, and say it's something really simple, like, I don't know, when's the assignment due? Now it's on the syllabus. They are not going to read the syllabus. So she will say, okay, the assignment is due, I know, Friday. Here's a tip. You don't have to respond to all chat questions. Neither does your TA, right? I mean, don't feel the pressure to respond to all of them. If there's a question that's so obvious, just let it sit. You know what's going to happen? Somebody else will answer it. And then the person who's raised the question probably will not do it again. Because if it's really obvious, just let the question sit for a while and somebody will respond to it. So when's the exam due and you're saying, man, it's on the syllabus, don't answer it. In like 2 minutes, somebody will say, look, it's actually due, all his assignments are due sort of Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. So it's due Sunday night, 11:59 p.m. Right? So I found that really useful. If it's really simple, I've told my TA, don't answer it. I won't answer it. And we sit for about 2 minutes. I continue on, I keep an eye on it. And sure enough, somebody is going to actually, so there are two people who've said that multiple monitors work. So again, that's a totally valid way to move forward, right? The third point is controversial. Slow it down. So by slow it down, I mean the following. Cover only the content that's absolutely essential. So I went through my syllabus with a big red pen saying anything I'm doing as voluntary or optional is out. There's no voluntary stuff, no optional stuff. I'm only doing what I have to do, number one. Number two, I'm going to do it twice, right? So often if my class is 1 hour, 15 minutes, I will lecture for an hour and then I will say, okay, I'm going to go through two topics again in the balance 15 minutes. So that's what I mean by slow it down. I would urge you to slow it down, right? Because if you do that, remember, I have no idea what's happening in my students' lives. They could be sitting on a kitchen table. They could be, I don't know what's happening with them. If you slow it down, they are likely to pick it up. I also post recordings of all my lectures. So I give them multiple opportunities to view stuff, but slowing down really helps. And so this slide is my governing philosophy for the class. No rabbit, only tortoise, right? Everything I try and speak slowly. I fail most of the time because I'm used to speaking fast. But I try and speak slowly. I try and say everything twice. And look, you may say, is it boring? Maybe, but they get it. And they will cut you a lot of slack if they get it, right? So again, I would urge everybody to say, look, there's lots of things I would do that's kind of optional in a face-to-face class. It's this online class. I have no idea what's happening with these folks. I'm slowing it down. At least that's my philosophy. And I think it served me really well, right? Okay. Let's talk about some of the satisfiers, right? So one of the things that and this is my advisor told me this many years ago. And look, this may not be true, but I believe it and sort of worked with that. He said the single biggest factor driving your evaluations is the student wants to know, do you want to be there? Now that's a very weird statement, but here's where he was going with it. He said we have other pressures. If you're tenure track, there's a guy with a gun pointing at your head saying produce research or whatever, right? So very often guys will go to class and the student gets the impression he really doesn't want to be here. He wants to go into something else. That is the kiss of death. Like that is terrible. Like if the student ever figures that out and say he really doesn't want to be here, he's here under protest, that is terrible. So this is something I always try and say that, look, I want to be here. I want to interact with you. You can't just say it. So there are various ways of managing this. In an in-person class, I come half an hour early, I leave half an hour late. And I say, come and talk to me. In an online class, same thing. Like today, Aisha will say, I popped in maybe half an hour early. Now, if this was a regular class, that's when, people would pop in half an hour before and they would, just chat about whatever issue they want to chat about. But that really helps. Now, will it work for everyone? I don't know. but that's what's worked for me. Now you could say there are office hours where they come and talk to you. You know, if somebody comes and sees you during office hours, I salute you. Nobody comes and sees me. I sit there for an hour. It's very boring. Nobody comes. I'm sitting there. I don't know. Like office hours has never worked for me in person or online. Nobody comes, right? But if you, at least in my case, I come early, half an hour. I leave late, half an hour. If you have a problem, you'll stick around, talk to me. And that has really helped. The next one, and this is where I want to answer the polling question, is engagement. So I know this issue's come up as a question. You've got 350 people in your class. I have no idea if anybody is even listening to you. Their cameras could be off. How do you get engagement? So sidebar, you could say the same thing about in-person class. 400 people in your classroom. How do you get engagement? I'll tell you how I did it. I went to so in-person classes. I went to two kinds of people. I went to Vegas and I saw Britney Spears do a concert. Now, not a great Britney Spears fan, but man, she works the crowd. And I went to churches. So there are these churches that are huge. It's like it seats 700-800 people. And you have a pastor. And some of them are really good. And they don't just sit there up and they lecture. They like walk the floor and do a bunch of things. Those tips that I picked up, I used in my in-person class. I have a mic that wraps around my head. I walk around and talk to people. Now suddenly it's online. Now what do I do? Well, I view it as the same thing. I mean, there are people on talk shows, etc., who basically speak and people listen. And I listened to some of those folks, and all I cared about is not what they said, but how they said it. And I think that's useful. It really builds engagement, right? So anything you can do is really helpful. The second thing I use, and look, this may not work for everyone, but you'll all have something that works for you. In my case, it's basketball. So right now, you know, I'll post something. So you'll see some slides on that. But at least it'll get some people interested. I promise you, if you have 50 people on the chat making all kinds of comments about something, the class wonders what's going on and they'll wake up. So all I need is 50 people in the chat screaming about basketball, and suddenly the class is woken up. Then I use iClicker. Now, somebody asked me about polling, so I'm going to respond to this here. iClicker is a polling mechanism. It can be used in an in-person class and an online class. I use iClicker only because I'm used to it. And I think it offers me some better functionality than the polling system here. I'm not saying the polling here doesn't work, but the iClicker is something I'm used to. And look, every 10 minutes, I'm going to stop and throw up an iClicker question, sometimes for points and sometimes not. I mean, sometimes I could just say, who do you think will be the MVP this year in basketball? That's not for points. Or I could say, I've just taught this topic. Can somebody tell me what this is? And it's a multiple choice question, it's 4 points. And look, now you're forcing everybody to respond. And that gets some engagement because willy-nilly they're trying to pay attention, because not all sessions, but in some sessions I have iClicker questions and they are introduced randomly in the class. And so willy-nilly they're paying attention, right? There are some best practices around iClickers. I'm sure CT will walk you through them, but I find it really useful to get engagement in the class. So I don't know if the poll works. I'm sure CT will say that. I just use iClicker because I think it offers better functionality. The third is your TA. Now, you may not have a TA, in which case this may not apply. But my TA is good. I mean, she will respond to some chat questions. Students have started dropping her a note and they feel a bit more comfortable with her than with me. If it's a difficult question, she'll route them to me. But if it's a simple question, she'll respond to them and she can speak their language. Like, I'd love to say I'm hip and I'm cool and all that, but sometimes when they say things, I don't get it. Like something about that is something about a rap session. They accused me of doing rap in class. I have no idea what they were talking about. Then my TA dropped a note saying, look, I mean, what they were trying to say is there's some rap phenomenon and they thought what I was saying sounded something like that. I didn't get it. She gets it. She responds. That keeps the thing going. The second PC laptop helps. And as some people have said, maybe multiple monitors would also help, right? Okay. The third point is controversial. I'm telling you right now, you guys will not everybody here is going to agree with me. So I'm a big believer in empathy. What does that mean? That means within the boundaries of the rules and the syllabus, I will try to help the student. Now, clearly, if you don't do any exams and you say, come pass me, that's kind of hard. But sometimes bad stuff happens. Look, I had COVID, man. It's not fun. It's not fun at all. So somebody says they have COVID and they have to move the exam back. Yeah. The other thing I do, and you may not do this, but I found it works very well. I give everybody my cell number. Everybody. Here's my cell number. Call me day or night, anytime. I get 2 calls a semester. Nobody calls me. Like I'm convinced I look like very scary or something. I have no idea what's going on. Nobody calls. I have a theory why they don't call. The theory is that if they call and it's something weird, I may just say, come on, man, that's on page 5 of the syllabus. And they just feel embarrassed. But I've started doing this, that if you email me, I'll say, here's my cell phone, call me. Typically, they don't. They go figure it out. But the advantage of the cell phone is I'm just thinking there's some student sitting, God knows where, I don't know, New Mexico, for all I know, on his mom's kitchen table, trying to figure out this class. He doesn't know if the class will work, if the materials work. I mean, who knows what's happening? But he has my cell number. Suddenly he says, okay, if something goes wrong, I can call this guy. Not saying anybody calls me, but I think it just helps. Now it's controversial. I know most of you will, or at least some of you will think, some of you will say, I'm not comfortable doing that. That's fair. But it's really worked for me. In-person class and online, I give people my cell number. Look, I've got 2 calls. And then, of course, I use Shark Tank, etc. for practice. So here's a question that somebody said, how to get better student engagement when camera's off, hard to tell if they're there or not. Here's my view, don't worry about everyone. Reach who you can. You reach 50 people, get them posting all kinds of things in the chat, everybody will join in. It's contagious. Just reach 50 people, just reach 20 people, right? Forget everyone. If you have 20 people, making all kinds of comments in the chat, the rest will join in. That's my view on engagement, plus some of the things I talked about. Okay, very quickly, backward thinking. Here's what this means. Forward thinking is who you are. So contingent on who you are, design your class accordingly. Either you're a person who can pull off humor in class or not. If you aren't, don't do it, right? So that's what I mean by forward thinking. I'll talk about it very quickly. Backward thinking is think who your student is and design the class accordingly, right? So forward thinking, I think I've worked a lot. So I use those examples. I think they already think of me as scary and competent. So I focus only on warmth. And those are some things that I think work for me. Will it work for everyone? I don't know. But bring your personality to the class. Backward thinking, I just think about my students. They are apprehensive. Will things work? So what do? I give you recordings. I come in half an hour before and test everything. And they see me testing stuff. And that just gives them some confidence that the class will work. They are bored. They're sitting on their mom's basement. I mean, God knows what's happening. So I do all kinds of stuff. And I'll talk about this in some of the slides. We've talked about practice. And then for motivation, I use iClicker, regular assignments. But let me focus on boredom, which is something that I acknowledge. They may be bored. I mean, they're sitting in their mom's basement. They've got a laptop. Who knows what's happening? So this is what I have for half an hour before class, where they know I'm testing everything. This tells them the class is going to work. They are bored. So I will do all kinds of weird things. Like, for example, now in basketball, you can vote for all-stars every day. So I put up, here's who I'm voting for. You know what happens? Now, this is not correct. There are lots of good players I've left out. Then the chat start flying. You missed Jason Tatum. You're biased. You missed Jaylen Brown. You're biased against Jaylen Brown. You chose Jason Tatum because he's from Duke. Suddenly you have all kinds of people screaming. Great. You've got engagement. That's before class starts. Life is good. I put this up last year when the NBA finals were going on. They lost it. LeBron is our favorite player. How can you put a bigger picture of Jimmy? I tried telling them, I'm an East Coast guy, man. What do you want me to do? I can't cheer for a West Coast team. They were furious. Every day we discussed basketball. But there was engagement, right? Use interesting slides. I try and use this. Here's the last thing I want to show in terms of slides. This is an example of, sort of product choices are driven by your mood, etc. So I showed this and it looks perfectly nice. But if you really want to get people excited, I then showed them on screen that I had a tub of Chunky Monkey and I proceeded to eat it during class. And they were rolling around, right? I do it when I teach an in-person class where I'll say, here's Chunky Monkey, I'm not sharing and I'm going to eat it. Gets them all excited, right? And so somebody asked this question, what's the value added of synchronous sessions when class size is so high? I think there are three things. I think engagement is better when it's synchronous. You can do these things that's hard to do asynchronously. Number two, I think I connect better with practice. Number three came actually from our dean. He said, perception-wise, if you have synchronous classes, you get less complaints from parents and students, even holding class quality constant. So there are some benefits of having synchronous sessions. And once you get the technology and other factors right, it's kind of easy to do. I'm happy to take any questions you have. I'll do my best to try and respond. If you have a question, yes. So Buffy, thank you. Yes, oh, that's the other thing. If you see a chat message, stop the class and respond. Works brilliantly. Question from Catherine. When you give your exams, what do you do? Opinions vary in the business school. Some people use some version of a lockdown browser. Some people use some kind of proctoring mechanism. Some don't. I'm not sure there's a right answer, but I know some don't. Two other questions that I've seen. Do you stand when you teach from home? Buffy, yes. I always stand. Look, I'm embarrassed. I'm old, man. When I sit, I fall asleep. So I stand. Right now I'm standing. I can move my hands, wave it around. I mean, all that stuff. I just feel more energetic. Then somebody says, do you teach a large class from home or face-to-face? My large class is from home. I mean, it's 450 people. We can't do that with social distancing. We don't have a room that big. So 350 people in my class, if I have to have social distancing, I literally teach it in the stadium. So everything is online in my case. There's no face-to-face. I do face-to-face when there's no COVID, but that's a different story. And then I will then throw out a tip that, again, may not work for everyone. Invest in technology. I think I have a fantastic mic. It's called Blue, works great. Invest in good cameras. I promise you it makes things work really well. I have this funny light that's got a ring around it. I promise you little stuff like that makes your life humongously easier. And have a backup plan. Like my camera broke down last semester and all I did was I said, guys, I need 10 minutes and switch to my backup. How do you get around the 250 max in sessions? So Justin, if you talk to CT, there's a button you click in Blackboard and then it becomes something called a webinar, which is what I normally use. Webinar has extremely limited capabilities, right? All the things you can do when it's a small class, you can't do in a webinar, but hey, it's a constraint. I live with it and I deal with it. I keep having to change dates for sessions. Yes, Justin, all the points you're making are valid. These are all problems with the webinar. And I'll be blunt, it's your problem and you have to deal with it. So I literally sit with my TA and I waste 2 hours at the start of semester setting up all sessions. It's extremely painful, but that's life. That's the best I have. How do you get the momentum going when you're pulling teeth? Look, I've been lucky, man. I mean, basketball seems to work for a bunch of folks. If I eat something, it works for a bunch of folks. But yeah, there are some days when it's flat. And life is tough. And you smile and say, look, clearly not my day today. And go to the next day. And that's the best you can do. Look, they are not expecting a rockstar session, every session. But if they get an engaging session 50% of the time, you're ahead of the curve. That's the best you can do. There was a last question around, somebody says, sports is not my jam. You'll find something that's your jam. Run with it. So I'm hitting the end point. I thank you very much for coming to the session, sharing your insights. Thank you so much.